Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 50 for Monday, December 8th. My name is Farbod Merkazi. He is Jace Hatfield. Jace, we've made it to 50. There's a lot to talk about, but I want to hear your voice on 50. Let's take this. Yeah, look, hey, we got fans. They're cheering for us.
It's a live studio audience.
Well, happy 50, Jace.
Thank you. We're over the hill in podcasting years. This is very exciting. And it's a great time for it. Episode 50, the college football playoff came out. We didn't even plan it this way. It just kind of worked out really well that episode 50 was a big one.
No, we actually, I mean, if you think about it, since April, you and I have spent over 2 full days just sitting here talking to each other about college football. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is actually wild to think about. Go back and add them all up. Episode 1 was on our birthdays, both plural, both of them. And then episode 50 was on National College Football Selection Show Sunday. Maybe episode 100 will be timed out for portals starting up. I don't know. We'll have to iron that one out this offseason.
Well, all right. Enough talking about ourselves. Let's talk about, obviously, Conference Championship Saturday happened. Selection Sunday finished up right before we started recording this. So we have a lot of thoughts on the college football playoff, on the games we saw on Saturday. I mean, Notre Dame's down bad. Texas is upset. BYU is upset. Miami's happy. We're going to talk about it. And Jace is going to call a shot today, folks. He's going to give us, we have the bracket now. He's going to give us who he thinks is going to win the national title. I kind of pitched him that idea like 15 minutes ago, so I don't know his answers. I don't know if he does, but once we get there, you're going to see the truth tellers give you their predictions. Jace, episode 50. We have to make sure we shout out our socials. Make sure you are following us on Twitter at F4Discussion, on TikTok at Flag4Discussion. We're on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Spell it out at Flag4Discussion. All right, let's get into conference championships. Jace, yesterday we had the Big Ten, we had the ACC, we had the SEC, we had the Big 12, we had all the conference championships except like the Sun Belt and the Mountain West that were on Friday. The most shocking of the results, I think, was Ohio State. Indiana beating Ohio State 13-10. And let's start with that game. I don't know if shocking is the right word, because you and I were talking yesterday. I said I choose not to be shocked by anything Curt Cignetti does anymore. But the manner in which that game happened, the fact that neither team could do anything in the red zone. They would get down there and they would come up blank. Fernando Mendoza on the first play takes a shot and he's like withering on the ground. It looks like he's out. He's going to be out for the whole game. He leaves the game. His brother Alberto comes in, hands the ball off. Fernando comes back in. Really gutsy performance. I mean, everything about that game, that was like what if the godfathers of the Big Ten wanted a Big Ten football game to look, right?
Yeah, 13-10 was their 8 combined sacks. I'll start with Ohio State. That was the first time and the most pedestrian we've seen their offense look all season. That usually I feel like it was starting with protecting Julian Sand. After that Michigan game, he had a clean jersey. We haven't really seen him get knocked around. He took 5 sacks for 30 yards, and I feel like that. We saw Indiana rattle Dante Moore earlier in the season in Autzen, and you could tell that they do a lot of disguise blitzes, a lot of backside blitzes, things of that nature, and it worked really well against Oregon. They ran a very similar style of defense against Ohio State, and it worked really well again. And part of you is wondering, okay, now that it's been on film twice, our team's going to learn from it, but part of you is also like, Ohio State and Oregon are damn good offensive lines with damn good coaching staffs, and if this Indiana defense is stopping both of them as well as they have, getting to the quarterback as well as they have, forcing turnover. Is this defense legit? Is this the best defense in the country for Indiana? I think Ohio State would probably tell you yes after that game. It was also, Ohio State's ran the ball well, and Bo Jackson ran the ball well again, but they only had, it's hard to do the math because Sands negative 30 yards, but they only had 87 yards of rushing from running backs in that game. Which is definitely under the average for Ohio State as a team that's kind of been running the ball incredibly well. And then they averaged like about 4.5 yards a carry, which is also about a yard short than what they had been all season. So hats off to the Indiana defense. that was definitely the most rattled we had seen Saiyan all season for a guy that felt unrattleable. That's even a word. If it's not, I'm inventing it.
Yeah. I I don't know. Okay, so I'm just looking at the game stats. Well, the game stats look pretty identical, and you kind of expect that for a game that ends up being a 3-point difference. Indiana had 2 more third down conversions, but Indiana was 6 of 13. Ohio State was 4 of 12, so pretty net even there. Indiana had 1 more fourth down conversion. Total yardage wise, Indiana had only 18 more total yards. Ohio State had more passing yards. Indiana had more rushing yards. I mean, yards per pass, Indiana 9.7, Ohio State 8.8. They both threw a pick. Penalties were similar. I mean, it just felt like watching that game had the mindset of one, you're really happy for Indiana because every one of these big games they get is further validating of what Kurt Signetti wanted people to know about his team going into this year. Last year they got a lot of crap. They hadn't played anybody, and they got beat in the playoff after playing a real opponent. This year they go into Autzen. They beat Oregon, kind of stifle Oregon. Oregon's offense was struggling against Indiana. They played Ohio State, and Ohio State was able to move the ball, but once they got down to the red zone, not. I think here's a podcast specific question. Like, I don't necessarily feel this way, but did Ohio State just lose that game, or did Indiana? Because for me, it felt like a game also that Indiana would. It would be 13-10. Ohio State at the 4th-1 inside their own red zone, kick the field goal. They tie it up. They maybe send it to overtime, and Ohio State ends up winning the game in a heartbreaking fashion for Indiana. It just felt like that's what the game script was going to end up being. I don't know. If they missed field goals, they were just. It was a week where they were distracted because Brian Hartline, their offensive coordinator, just took the USF job. I don't know if that had any impact in it. Is that? Do you know where I'm going with this? Like, did Ohio State just lose this game, or did Indiana take it from them?
I think Indiana took it from them. Obviously, Ohio State made mistakes, but I don't think they were just blatantly horrible mistakes. I thought Indiana, offensively and defensively, and because part of the Indiana magic we were texting about during the game, every single time Indiana needed to make a play, whether it was a third down stop, a fourth down stop, forcing a missed field goal. Yes, it was short, but he missed it. And on offense, every third, Indiana gets to more third and longs than any good team I've ever watched. But they also convert third and longs like it's a 3rd and 1, and they're an NFL team against a JV team. Like they just every single time they needed to make a big play, Mendoza was putting the ball on the money. And no Omar Cooper, whether it was Surratt on the touchdown or they went to Brady, they were using a slew of receivers you haven't heard much. Every single time one of them was called upon, they made a big catch. They made a contested catch. On the flip side, every single time they needed to stop, they got it. Aiden Fisher was there. They got a big sack on multiple third downs. They got a big interception on Saiyan, that something we hadn't seen from him much this year. I just felt that every crucial moment, every play where it was, this is a game-changing type of play. The 4th down when Ohio State was in the red zone, Indiana made the play, and I think that they won that game because of their ability to make the big play when they needed to. And I think watching that game, you kind of felt like there's this magic to them that those teams that win national championships, those teams that go far, that they kind of just seem to, every jump ball seems to fall in their arms, that kind of thing. Indiana had that going their way. So I don't want to take away from their win. I think they won.
No, that's kind of pretty much how I feel. I think Indiana. I think when people ask stupid questions like, "Did someone win the game or did the other team lose?" It's like, well, they have to still set themselves up to be in a position to win the game. So Indiana, it wasn't like they got lucky. They held on. Their defense played very well. You held Ohio State to 10 points. Your offense didn't look the best, but Ohio State's defense, we've covered it plenty. If I told you last week during our preview show that Ohio State was going to hold Indiana to 13 points, you and I would have both put like $50 down on Ohio State winning and covering.
Yeah,
there's no for me. Yeah, there's no way in my head I would have been like, all right, Ohio State probably going to end up 20 to 28 points. But that's going to cover the 4.5 that this game was at. Look, you got to give credit to Indiana. It was shocking the manner in which the game panned out, but Fernando Mendoza gave us one of the best post-game speeches again. His second year in a row giving us a really fun post-game speech. Do you remember the one at Cal?
I do not, but I loved the one he had yesterday.
Send you the video. It was the 98 yards with my boys video. But Fernando Mendoza is clearly just, I think every game he's proving that he's deserving of a top 5 NFL draft pick. He's got a really good head on his shoulders, really smart. He's the guy you want leading your program, and just a great ambassador for the Indiana Hoosiers. Let's talk about what this means. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean anything in terms of them getting into the playoff. They were both undefeated going into this game. We know the selection Sunday, they're both in the top 4. That's it. But I went into this game saying Ohio State. You went into this game on Thursday saying Ohio State hasn't shown us a weakness yet, and that's scary. And I agreed with you. I went into that show last week saying I would be terrified if Ohio State was on my side of the bracket, and I still am. Is there a aspect of that game that gives you pause on Ohio State as a legit national title contender?
I'm still bought in on their national championship like prowess and their ability to do it. It does make them feel way more human. And I think before this week had started, I was almost like trying to find any way that Ohio State wasn't going to win the national championship, and it felt impossible to do, or it felt like you were reaching if trying to figure out what's the scenario. I felt like I'm reaching too much to find that out. On this side of things, though, it almost now feels like, okay, they are human. Like their offensive line isn't some like brick wall that'll never be broken. Their wide receivers are coverable. Like their running game isn't or their run defense isn't as stifling as we thought it was going to be. I thought Indiana, they're a good, not great rushing team, and they ran the ball pretty well and successfully. I think the Ohio State secondary hasn't really been tested this season, just mainly due to how good their pass rush is, how good their team is, and also just not playing a true downfield passing offense all season. They see it against Indiana, and Indiana succeeded. It felt like, okay, this team is beatable. Are they still amazing? Absolutely. There's even that slight fear, if you remember last year. It's a different circumstance, absolutely. So I'm not drawing a direct parallel. But if you look at last year when they lost to Michigan right before the playoffs, they came out with their hair on fire. And part of you wonders, are we going to get something similar from Ohio State? Different circumstance, but there's also a little bit of that where you kind of freaked out, like, oh no, do we get a mad Ohio State?
Yeah, I wonder, because you actually asked me, like, is Ohio State about to go on the revenge tour? And I think my response to you last night was that they're not going to be. It's not going to be classified as a revenge tour, because it was not like you just mentioned. It's not like they just lost in an embarrassing fashion in Michigan. They are still one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in my mind. The team I still don't want to play. Now, I don't know if that game proved that, like, oh, they can be beat. I just wonder if that just means Indiana is the best team in the country. They're clearly the best coach team in the country. They clearly game plan the best of anyone. They have a senior quarterback that leads them, right? And they're all those players, even though Chris Ignetti's been at Indiana for 2 years, those players pretty much were at James Madison with them before that. So they've all been together for about 4 years. They've all grown, except Fernando Mendoza. And Fernando Mendoza, you can't say enough good things about. I feel like, in general, I think the question for me in general is, Ohio State, if you don't have pause on them, does this at least bolster Indiana's ability to win a national title in your mind?
I think so. Like I said, that magic that I was kind of referring to, that really, every time, and almost in any sport, when a team wins their respective championships, you get a sense of magic to it, where just they like in baseball, every time they need a big hit, someone steps up, no matter who it is. In football, it's just you need a defensive stop. That linebacker just shoots through a gap and makes a huge hit. On offense, you throw a 50-50 ball, and no matter who it is going up to catch it, they always seem to come down with it. It's just though the teams that can elevate and make big plays, and that also is part of coaching and putting the right people in the right spots to make plays and then also executing at a really high level. Indiana's doing all of it. They're putting the right people in the right spots. They're executing. They're calling the right plays when they need it, and they're gutsy. Like they're not afraid to throw a go ball for the win. They're not afraid to blitz on a big fourth down play and leave themselves vulnerable. Like Kirk, like you kind of mentioned already, you alluded to, Kurt Signetti seems like a killer. He seems like he knows how to win. He knows how to game plan, and he's confident. And his coaching staff just seems to be putting together just repeated amazing game plans. Now, I say all that, I don't think they're untouchable. They've had a few close calls as of recent, but as good teams do, they find ways to win. So both these teams going into the game were, in my mind, the two best teams in the country, and they were kind of the two most feared teams. I would say Ohio State toned back the fear that I would have, but it's still there. And Indiana ups the fear that I had. And I think they're kind of on the same playing field where I'm like, these are two damn good football teams. I don't really want to see either of them. I think they're both playing at an elite level. They're on different sides of the bracket, being 1 and 2. There's a very real chance that this is our national championship game. And I feel like it might go pretty similarly if that's the case in terms of a low scoring. Just these two defenses just played so well. It looked like I was watching a step above college football. And maybe that was because the games earlier in the day weren't as competitive. So we finally got one. But yeah, I think both these teams are elite, and they showed it.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the SEC championship game. This one wasn't, I don't know where I would categorize this game on the shock meter. Because Ohio State, Indiana, like I said, was the biggest shock for me because I think everybody in the country was like, Indiana's cute, but Ohio State's going to beat them, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Alabama, no one knew how the game was going to go. Alabama beat Georgia in Athens in September. Alabama has consistently, with Saban and DeBoer, beaten Georgia and Kirby. Kirby's now 2-7 all time against Alabama. The other win coming in the national title game, obviously. But there was points of this game where I thought Georgia was going to shut him out. Like, I know they only ended with 7 points, but I thought for sure Alabama had no idea what was happening. Ty Simpson couldn't. It just was such a frustrating offensive performance to watch as a neutral party of this game, because I thought every time Ty Simpson dropped back, either his receivers were extremely well covered, 1, 2, his offensive line couldn't hold Georgia, 3, and then 3, it felt like every play was hard. Whereas when you watch Georgia offensively, they might not have been extremely explosive, but Mike Boba, you got to give him credit. Every time Gunnar Stockton dropped back, it was, all right, roll out or play action or just a normal couple-step drop. The completions were right there. The tight end flew out, found a soft spot in zone. It wasn't a 15-yard pass, but 5 yards down the field, 5 yards down the field, 8 yards down the field. Bully them, get them tired defensively, and eventually you'll get points on the board. I don't know. I feel like every time I saw Georgia on offense, there were a couple of plays specifically in that first half where Stockton rolled out, hit a running back or a tight end, and there wasn't a defender in sight. And you just didn't see that on the Alabama offense. Maybe it was game planning. Maybe Ty Simpson was slow to react. I just thought one team made it look easy, and then the other team just couldn't figure it out or couldn't get out of their own way.
Yeah, you're spot on. That was my exact feelings too. But if you and I had both kind of analyzed this game going into it as both these quarterbacks had been struggling as of late, and both these teams, like offensively, just didn't look as dominant as we thought they were and as they had been earlier in the season, maybe is the better way to say it. I thought Georgia, exactly as you said, they got back to their roots. Like, they're not a team, especially with this current makeup, that's going to have running backs break 80-yard touchdown runs and is going to bomb you over the top every other play and throw jump balls down the sideline. But they're an offense that can have a really good O line, like we saw here. And like you said, they were very creative, quick passing game that was like you said, tight end, catch, turn up field, 5 yards. Nate Frazier, handoff at least 4 yards. It just felt like it was very methodical. And then the Alabama side, exactly what we were afraid of, bad O-line play. And I thought Georgia attacked it perfectly. I thought they brought down their secondary. They brought down their corners, kind of had them play in the hard flats. And then if they were rushing 4 or 5, they were basically banking on Ty Simpson not having enough time to read the defense and get to his second or third read downfield. And that's exactly what happened. The few times he had the time to actually read the defense, I just thought he was frazzled and he just didn't make a good player. He would second guess the throw, and by the time he realized he should have made it, it was too late. And he was either thrown out of bounds, or now he was taking the sack, or it was, okay, I'm just throwing this into double coverage and in harm's way. He took 3 sacks, and I mean, how many hurries do you think he had? He dropped back 39 through 39 passes. I bet over half of those he was rushed or being hit,
if not more.
And then they have no run game like whatsoever. And I get they didn't have Jam Miller, but let's be real, they haven't had a run game really all season. And you and I have been consistently saying, like, this is a really good team with upside, but if they don't figure out a way to establish the run on these good SEC teams and good teams in general, they're not going to have a very high ceiling. And I think you really saw what Alabama looks like right now. And unfortunately for the rest of the country, you saw Kirby Smart look like playoff Kirby Smart. Does this put Georgia into the Indiana, Ohio State conversation for you in terms of teams I don't want to see? Does Georgia get there now after this performance?
Without a doubt. I think Georgia is one thing we know, and one thing we know Ryan Day kind of figured out last year was obviously he didn't want to lose to Oregon early in the year. He didn't want to lose to Michigan, obviously. But they built that team and coached the games, coached practices, set up their entire schedule so they can peak at the end of the season. I mean, coaches say that's obvious. In the NFL, you go through January, and the tough part there is you might lose guys. You have 53-man rosters in the NFL, but at least you can pick guys up on waivers. In college football, you can't. And in this extra competitive NIL transfer portal era where having depth or quality depth is really hard and challenging right now, it's hard to be peaking at the right time. It's hard to build your team. And obviously, health is sometimes just random. But we spent a decent chunk of the season talking about, all right, is Georgia actually good? And they're a 12-1 team. We spent a chunk of the season saying, like,
Yeah,
this is probably a good Georgia team, but I don't know if this is a national champion Georgia team. And they've just, like you just said, they're not going to be massively explosive like a Lincoln Riley offense. Their defense might not be as good as 2021 or 2022 Georgia. But damn, that defense, you don't want to go up against that defense. The best Alabama running back yesterday finished with 11 rushing yards. You just think about that. 4 carries for 11 yards, Daniel Hill. A.K. Deer had 3 carries for 10 yards. And that's just the start of it. And then Ty Simpson was pressured the entire time. That's not a guy. This is not a team that you want to face if your quarterback's young or your offensive line has a couple injuries. And mind you, Georgia was missing Drew Bobo, their center. Like they weren't without injury in this game too. I would be scared, not scared. I would be at least mildly intimidated if Georgia was on my side of the bracket, because look, I would go as far as to say they could beat Indiana and Ohio State if they play like that.
Yeah, this is a team, and mind you, they had 7 penalties for 80 yards to Alabama's 1 penalty for 5. So it was a game that was arguably a little sloppy on the Georgia side too. They were 4 for 4 in converting red zone opportunities to touchdowns. This is a Georgia team that I think if they get ahead on you, they are going to be really hard to come back on. They play aggressive defense, and offensively, these long touchdown drives where they sustain 10 plus plays for 4, 5, 6+ minutes, it's going to be difficult to make a comeback on this Georgia team. They're going to wear your defense down. They're going to be difficult to be a bomb over the top. They're going to be difficult to hit a big play on. But this is also a team that I think if you get up on them early, which is a big if, but if you do it, that would be their weakness, I think, is trying to then mount a comeback. They don't really have that big play style of offense or that big play wide receiver in terms of going up and getting a football the way Eli Surratt might, the way that Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate might. And their defense could be, I would say, like, if you were able to win in the trenches, that's also a weakness. Like we were saying, Georgia's up on you and they get up early. Kirby Smart's not a coach who's prone to letting leads go. And the way that this team is built, it's built to just kind of be a machine. And first quarter, okay, we have a chance here. Second quarter, okay, we're pretty tired. Third quarter, oh, okay, get me off this field. Fourth quarter, you saw what happened here in the last against Texas. In the fourth quarter, they ran away with this game. Against Alabama, it was a pretty consistent slaughter, but they like constrict you. Maybe like a boa constrictor would be the right analogy for Georgia. It's just once they get their grip on you, it's just like you feel the life, and you could feel it watching this game. Like Alabama, by the mid third quarter, they looked lifeless on the sideline. The fans looked lifeless. The team did. At Georgia, just man, they just I don't even know what the right word is, but that might be my best analogy for them.
No, that was great. And granted, by the mid third quarter, you're right, but it was 14-0 until Georgia scored in the mid third quarter, and it was 14-0. It just fell over because it's funny you say that about how Georgia's not built to come back. I agree because that offense isn't necessary. That offense is, if we can run the ball, roll the quarterback out, get easy yards, be methodical, we can not only hold on to the ball, we will limit our mistakes, and we'll still get down the field, but it just won't be, I don't know, Chip Kelly blur Oregon offense, you know? But it's funny you say that because all year we've spent time talking about how Georgia's fallen behind of late. Like they fell behind to Tennessee, they fell behind the first time at Alabama, and they came back and won some of the games. They didn't have anything against Auburn until they came back and won the second half. Obviously, it was a crazy call in that game. But Georgia was the team that had to come back because they just couldn't get off the fast starts. So my thought in that game in the first or second quarter was, one, oh my God, the first quarter is already over. That flew by. Two, okay, we are 14-0. Georgia has a lead. Let's see how it goes from here. And once Alabama came out in the second half and in the third quarter, they take the ball. And I in my head, I said, they got the ball first. They're down 14. This is the put up or shut up. Like this drive's going to dictate how Alabama's offense is going to be for the rest of the game. They go 3 plays, -8 yards, punt. So Georgia from there, 6 plays, 40 yards, score their third touchdown of the game, go up 21-0, and that was essentially it. Alabama punted 3 plays, 7 yards later. Look at Alabama's third quarter shot drives. 3 plays, -8 yards, punt. 3 plays, 7 yards, punt. 3 plays, 8 yards, punt. Alabama scores a touchdown on a 9-play drive in the fourth quarter. Turnover on downs, 4 plays, 8 yards. Turnover on downs, 12 plays, 58 yards. It's just the amount of 3 and outs, the amount of just ineptitude on the Alabama offense. And a lot of that was because they just couldn't run the ball. And I don't think that's just because Jam Miller wasn't playing. That worries me if I'm Alabama. You texted me something pretty, I mean, we'll get into the playoff conversation, but you texted me something pretty thought-provoking yesterday. Does this Alabama team look like a playoff team? And I said no. Obviously, like that's recency bias, or you can't just make a conclusion off of one game. But Alabama's looked pretty subpar for the better part of the last month and a half. They needed a 4th and 2 play against a coachless Auburn team to win that game. They obviously have the worst loss in the country with Florida State. They lost to Oklahoma. They looked fine against LSU, beat them. I had a solo show the day after they beat South Carolina 29-22. They had to come back and win that game. And my thought process in that was, that's after several emotional games. they let their foot off the gas, but when they needed, they came back and they won. I'm not worried about it. We'll see how they do for the rest of the year. And the rest of the year, even though they won most of the games, it's been pretty disappointing to me. So I don't know how they're going to do in the playoff. It's funny because I feel like we could sit here for 15 minutes and talk about how they're going to get blown out and they're going to go win the national title. Like that's just
Yeah.
how Kalen DeBoer operates.
Yeah, he's one of those coaches that can turn on in a heartbeat. But that was interesting because I was watching that game and they did not look like a college football playoff team, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean that they didn't deserve to be in. We'll talk about that here in a minute because there's a little bit different. With the way the playoff is set up, it's not necessarily who are the best teams. There's a little bit more that goes into it. But in regards to that game gave me no hope that Alabama's going to go far into a college football playoff. I thought Oklahoma was probably the best draw they could have gotten, just considering the way Oklahoma plays. They've already played them once. But it did feel like if Alabama drew an Ole Miss or an offense that was actually clicking on all cylinders and some like an Ole Miss, because Ole Miss, yes, they have a lackluster defense, but as long as they're getting to Ty Simpson, Alabama's offense looks like it has nothing. It can't fit. I don't know what they're going to do if the defense gets to Ty Simpson because they had no answers there. Auburn, they really didn't have answers in that game either. They're in an interesting spot right
Yeah. Like I said, we doubt them now. They can go off and do pretty cool things. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the Final Four. I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the playoff. But right now, with how they've played, the lack of run game, the making Ty Simpson be Superman when he doesn't have the capability. Like he's a good quarterback, but he's not your special like first overall pick type quarter. Like when Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb's scheme, when they didn't have a run game, Penix made it work. He had the really good receivers. He had a really good O line, but Penix figured it out. He had his strong arm rolled out. I was able to find receivers. Ty Simpson's not that quarterback, and I think that's okay to say. I think it's okay to be like Ty Simpson's a good quarterback. He's a good college quarterback. I don't know if he has that extra gear to put a team on his back and say, "Come with me." They need to help him out more. They need better protection. They need better. And the game started out honestly pretty quick change of possessions on both sides, and both teams' defenses were looking pretty dangerous early on. And I thought, oh, Alabama's here to win. Alabama's here to crush them. And then bad interception here, just bad play there. Offense couldn't get going, and that's the result we had.
Yeah, you made a great the Michael Penix like comparison's a big deal. And something, if you recall the days of Washington, it looks like a very similar style of offense, but it felt like whenever Penix was under pressure for one way or another, I don't know what it is about him, he made his best throws. Like the harder you hit him and the more square the hit was, the better the bomb was. Like
Yeah.
he would drop a 45-yard, just chuck it up deep right into the bucket of Roma Dunze while getting like a helmet to the chin. Like just it was even make unbelievable throws like that. It almost felt like the more intensity the D line brought, the better Penix got, and that's when that system rocks because when they're sacrificing the back ends to bring pressure, you get one on one with the elite receivers, or even just a safety over the top, but he's not paying a lot of attention to that side of the field. That's when the plays happened, and Ty Simpson he's kind of the opposite. It's when the intensity seems to get high, when the pressure gets to him, he seems to shrink a little bit. He seems to not make the big throws, not make the big plays. And that's very normal. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. That's almost every quarterback falls into that category. It's just the difference between having a big play, big time quarterback with a big arm, and then I think Ty Simpson might fall a little bit more into the game manager category, which sometimes, and what we're learning in this offense might not be enough to execute this offense when your offensive line isn't doing you any favors.
Now, one last question before we move to Big 12. Does Alabama need one or two playoff wins for Kalen DeBoer to feel good about his seat next year?
Yes, I would think so. Last year they missed the playoff. This year you very much would have had a fair argument if you said they should miss it again. They didn't, thankfully, for Kalen DeBoer, because I think if they do, he would have been gone. I also can't imagine, from what I'm reading online, fans are not very happy. Alabama fans are not happy with Kalen DeBoer.
But
I
they're
don't
spoiled.
think there's a healthy. Yeah, yes, they are
in the
the grand
nicest
scheme
way
of
possible.
things,
They're
right?
spoiled.
Yes, and I can't imagine Kalen DeBoer is loving it in terms of you lose a game and it's like everyone hates you and everyone thinks that you're the worst coach ever and wants your head on a stake. So I don't imagine there's a very healthy relationship between Kalen DeBoer and his mental health with being at Alabama and the Alabama fans and her mental health with Kalen DeBoer being there. I think for the sake of both groups of people, they could use a couple playoff wins to come together. I'll tell you this: if they lay a dud against Oklahoma, he better get and never come back to Alabama, never show his face there again if they get handed their butts to him by Oklahoma.
Now, I think there's a conversation about Nick Saban retired because he knew where the program was heading because Alabama wasn't as competitive NIL wise. I'm not saying Alabama's done or Alabama's never going to reach those heights. I think saying Alabama fans are spoiled isn't like a rude thing or a disrespectful thing. I think it's honest that Alabama fans have experienced more success and more times at the top of the mountain than anybody else. And more power to you. I hope everyone's program gets to that point one day. But I've heard people talking about how Saban didn't just retire because of his age. Saban might have retired because he knew where college football was going, that Alabama wouldn't be as easily as competitive as they had been for the entire length of his tenure. So he wanted to get out while he was still easily the GOAT. You know, if I'm making sense, it's like they're competitive at NIL, but they're not Ohio State. They're competitive. They're aggressive in the transfer portal. They're aggressive, but other teams are too. It's not like they're special in that regard anymore. And it's kept them as a really good team, but it's brought a lot of teams up, like onto their level. So there is an argument to that, and I hope Kalen and his job is safe, win or lose in this game for next year. But if they lose early in the playoffs, man, and they start out pretty hot next season, but maybe drop another one that they shouldn't have, it's going to get really intense there. It's going to get really. They always say you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy, and that's what Kalen DeBoer became. Some of that's kind of soft. Like you always want the best jobs. So it doesn't matter if you're following the guy, but Kalen's intensity could be really facing some pretty intense situations if they lose early in the playoff.
I think they need a good showing if he's going to be the head coach of Alabama next year. Whether it's him leaving or them firing him. If it's a bad showing game one against Oklahoma, things could get ugly.
I don't think they'd fire him this year. I feel like it'd be a mid-season thing next year if like they start out poor and they lose a playoff game early.
I could see like a mutual parting of ways, something like that. I think there's just I don't know. It's interesting to have the conversation from like the Alabama fans. I know there's not a lot of love between DeBoer and the program and the fan base. So I don't know how bad things will get there before it changes, but also just for this, like I said, for the sake of his own mental health, like having a fan base just to hate you as much as they do, that just can't be fun to coach somewhere like that.
Hot take. Next year, if Michigan's doing poorly and Alabama's 10-2, 9-3, and they want parting of ways, Kalen takes the Michigan job and does Alabama's 80s job for him. I'll give you my prediction on December 7th, 2025 for what might happen.
You got the crystal ball out.
If they lose to Oklahoma in the first round, if next year they don't take a step up, that might happen. All right. Big 12 championship game. Not a whole lot to be said here. Texas Tech rolled BYU 34-7. BYU started the game on a 14-play, 90-yard drive. They took up 6 minutes and 50 seconds of time of possession. They score a touchdown. They go up 7-0. They have, for the rest of the game, 45 plays for 110 yards. Texas Tech forces 4 turnovers in the second half. Jacob Rodriguez, Ben Roberts. I mean, that game, if Texas Tech had an SEC patch on it, they would be the number 1 team.
Yeah, they dominated everybody heavily. BYU felt like Notre Dame last year against Ohio State, where they came out with this great first scripted drive, but when the first scripted drive is like converting a lot of third and shorts with QB runs and play actions, it's like you kind of shown all your cards at that point. You've also tired out your own offense. And
Yeah.
even though they had the 7-0 lead, it was kind of one of those leads where you're like, we'll see. If they get to 20 points, I'll start to get nervous. Or not nervous, but like maybe they're going to pull this off. And then just, yeah, like they just didn't have the juice. Everything that the haters said about BYU, I think they were right. And all the things that BYU fans were saying about their team, I'm sorry. I think you were wrong on that. Like they're saying that they would beat, give me Ohio State, give me Indiana, give me Oregon, give me one in the Big Ten. We'll beat them. I'm sorry. You would have had to win this game to convince me that would be true. Not only did you just not win, you just looked entirely uncompetitive and didn't even look like you existed within a tier or two of Texas Tech. And I'm saying that partially to credit Texas Tech because they are, in my opinion, they are on that top tier 1 teams right now. And BYU didn't even look like they were in tier 2 or maybe even tier 3, just based on how, if you go through their second half drive chart, it is just horrible. Turnover after 3 and out. They had more turnovers than they did first downs, and that's just unacceptable.
Yeah. Second half drive chart, field goal miss, interception, punt, fumble, interception, turnover on downs, fumble, punt. Hey, well, what else can you say about that? Look, BYU, like I said, they go 14 plays, 90 yards, score a touchdown. The rest of the game, they have 45 plays, 110 yards. It was clear that they were trying to protect Bear Bachmeier back there because every play was like a dink and dunk pass play if there was one. They took very little shots downfield. Bear ended with 2 interceptions, 115 yards. Finished with 63 total rush yards. And to your point, I think how I feel about this is like, okay, BYU might have a case, or the same thing we said about Alabama. Alabama might have a case, but we've seen BYU now go up against a top playoff team in the country twice now, and they've not only gotten beat, they couldn't compete. That's simple as that. And for me, it's how do I know what's going to happen? I can't foreshadow or predict what BYU would do against an Oregon or against a Texas A&M. But at least the point of data that I have that they've gone up against Texas Tech, and maybe it's just a bad matchup, but they've gone up against a team in that range and gotten handled. Scored like 14 total points in 2 games. One of them was on the road. One of them was in the conference championship game. At that point, how do you have the ability to tell me, yeah, this is one of the 12 best teams in the country, when we've seen you go up against the teams that are higher than you and you just couldn't, you lay an egg?
Yeah. And like when they played Utah is unanimously a good team, but I don't think anyone was trying to claim Utah was a playoff team. And when BYU played Utah, they looked very even, which made me think, okay, well, we've seen BYU against a good, not great team, and they looked to be the same as them. And we've seen BYU against an elite team twice, and they looked like they didn't deserve to be on the same field as them both times. So I think it's safe to say BYU is a good, not great team. They had I think if they win this game, obviously if they win this game, they're in. And that was their chance. And I think if you're a BYU fan, all you can ask for is a chance. Like I'm sure Miami fans, it worked out for them. They're in the playoff. But I can guarantee you they would have killed just for a chance to prove themselves. You got that chance. You lost handedly. And I think I don't think they were in the playoff regardless of the outcome of this game. If they lose, even if it was close, I think they were probably on the outside anyways. But I think it very much solidified the committee's mind. Yeah, this team they're not in the playoff. And, unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. There's not too much else around this game. Texas Tech looked.
No.
I've heard people kind of cool off on Texas Tech a little bit, but to credit of you and me, we've been on Texas Tech and been high of them for quite a while now. And I feel like we've been some of the more pro Texas Tech talking heads. And I've heard a lot of people in the media just kind of Texas Tech. We'll see. I think they're legit. I really do. Oregon, Texas Tech, presumably don't want to get ahead of the Ducks for them. That should be a phenomenal football game. And I believe that'll be in Miami. So 2 teams that'll have to travel relatively far to different time zones to go play that. But that should be just a fantastic football game that we get in the second round.
To be honest with you, we're probably the biggest Joey McGuire fans outside of Lubbock.
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
I'm a huge Joey McGuire fan. I was just watching him after that game, he was clearly emotional at the end of the game because it brought them to the Big 12 title game, won the title game, and this was the start of their new process with the new investment. It wasn't like they're not 4 years into it. So imagine how good they could be next year or the year after that as investments keep going, as they keep stacking these classes, as they keep attacking the portal. Texas Tech could be in a really good spot. All right. We are 46 minutes into the show. We haven't talked about the college football playoff yet in its entirety. The college championship Saturday ended, leading to Selection Sunday today. Here, if you haven't seen, are the top 12 seeds of the college football playoff. Indiana's number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia number 3, Texas Tech 4, Oregon 5, Ole Miss 6, A&M 7, Oklahoma 8, Alabama and Miami are 9 and 10. Tulane and JMU, we got 2 group of 5 teams sitting there at 11 and 12. So obviously Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech get the automatic buys. They won't play until New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, depending on when their game shakes out to being. The rest of the games will start December 19th and 20th for the first round. I mean, Oregon, Ole Miss, A&M, and Alabama have home games, and they'll go from there. Okay, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Notre Dame's not in this. Miami is. 3-4 weeks ago, Miami was sitting at number 18 in the college football playoff. Notre Dame was sitting at like 9. The next week it was like 10. It was like 9 and 15. And then last week it finished at 10 and 12. And neither team had a football game this weekend. Miami was in the ACC title game. Notre Dame not in a conference, so they couldn't play in their championship game. So by no metrics, Miami jumped Notre Dame. I'll go first because I just want to put it out there. I don't think it was the wrong call. I think the committee screwed themselves by putting them so far away from each other from the beginning. And how the committee has graded teams, at least this year and throughout years, is they put teams in pools. And every 3 to 4 teams is another pool. So they compare those buckets together. Well, 9 and 18 are too far from Miami and Notre Dame to be compared. And the committee set themselves up for all this anger and backlash by just putting them so far apart in the first one. I think it's laughable, just the sense that a team jumps another team despite neither of them playing. Like, how, if you told me on Tuesday last week that Notre Dame is better than Miami by 2 spots, 10 and 12, they don't play football, you just meet again over the weekend, and now Miami's better than Notre Dame? What do you think? Like, what do you believe, committee? I don't understand how that they set themselves up constantly, year after year, to just become the laughing stocks of college football. It's
Yeah,
you know
Miami,
what I mean?
I think Miami just bye weeks better than Notre Dame. I guess that's what it is. Maybe
Right.
they relax better. They take time off better. Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's incredibly stupid, and that's a whole nother discussion of like, what do we do about the poll? Remember when the very first poll dropped, you made the comment, Notre Dame being this high above Miami, the committee will regret this. And you could not have been more correct then, and you could not even be more correct today. It's so dumb. I don't mind the outcome. Like, I don't mind Miami being over Notre Dame. That's not the issue here. It's how they got to that conclusion of, oh, I guess after this bye week, well, Mario Cristobal looked really good on the beach in Miami on the bye week, so I think we're going to jump them over Marcus Freeman because he was shirt on in South. What are we rating this on? And of course, like, you don't get, they're part of the ESPN broadcast. You don't really get to hear like that question wasn't asked. And so they just get to say, here's why we picked them. Like, I get why you picked them. They won head to head. We all understand that metric. How do you justify jumping a team 3 spots over a team when they both didn't play the same?
Yeah. No,
I
that's
don't get it.
I think my biggest frustration is that the committee keeps setting themselves up to be the laughing stocks of this sport year after year. Because what they did, like, I guess one of the best ways to put it is like, I'm happy they got it right. Because in the end of it, if those two teams were going up for one spot, yes, Miami has the head to head. They deserve to be in the playoff. Now, if we're just blindly ranking the best teams in the country, I would put Notre Dame above them. And you could argue that that's what the playoff should be, and I fully believe you, and I fully agree with you. But that's not what this playoff is. This playoff has his own criteria, and we have to adhere to those criteria, or else it's all bullshit in the end of it. And Miami, by that criteria, was pretty even. Same record, just similar strength of schedule, similar performance against common opponents, and they beat Notre Dame. Now, I feel terribly for Notre Dame. Their only losses of the year were not only early in the season, but against two top 10 teams in the country, two playoff teams their losses were against. But in the end of it, those are still losses. And you lost to one of the teams ahead of you. That's the biggest part of it. Is I was worried that the committee wouldn't do the right thing. Look, I'm Notre Dame fans would probably hate me saying that that's the right thing. I was worried that the committee wouldn't do the right thing, but I'm glad that they got it right. Just so annoyed that they keep setting themselves up for just crazy decisions year after year. I warned you about this, by the way. I told you, like, they're setting it up for the last playoff reveal for them to just switch them.
Yep.
The same thing they did with Florida State in 2 years ago. They were always number 4. On the last one, they swapped them.
I think it was TCU, like in like the first or second ever playoff too. It was the first one. It was the year they should have been in over Ohio State probably, which ironically enough, the committee went back and said, well, Ohio State won it all, so we were right. But even then, it was a similar scenario then. You alluded to this, and there were 2 correct outcomes with what the committee could do with the playoff. Correct outcome number 1 was save the sanctity of conference championships, keep the meaning of them, and keep the meaning of non-conference / head-to-head record games. That was, and you have to, either strategy you have to go all in. You can't half-ass them. So that was the one correct path, which is the one they did. So I'm not mad at the solution they came to, considering at least they went all in on one of the correct paths. Now, the other correct path, which is probably what I think the majority of people want, and what you could fairly probably say is objectively the best way to do it, and that is picking the best teams to represent in the college football playoff. And if that was the case, Notre Dame, I'm with you. Notre Dame is a top 10 football team in the country, and there's really no debate about that, in my opinion. And if you disagree, you probably haven't watched Notre Dame football. I challenge you to put them on TV and watch. They also have 2 losses to 2 playoff teams by a combined 4 points, and it was week 1 and week 2 with a true freshman quarterback. So, like, they're a top 10 team, but like you said, they got it right because they went down the path that was conference championships really matter. That's probably the only reason why Alabama stayed in the playoff after that game. Then you go look at Ohio State only dropped to 2. They didn't drop down to 3 or beyond, even though Georgia won, and they didn't. They said, hey, we're not going to punish you guys for losing these games. We're only going to reward the winners. So that's what happened with Georgia. It's what happened with Indiana, Ohio State, Alabama. And then obviously Miami. They went the head-to-head route and said, we want non-conference to matter. That's a really big win. And it was head-to-head against this team, so we'll pick them. They saved face, and they gave you the logical, fair reason for why those teams made it. But it does beg the question, are these the 12 best teams in college football? Did we pick the 12 best teams, or did we just pick the 12 teams that were a combination of best, but also earned it through these varying metrics that the College Football Playoff Committee has deemed to be the best way to figure out who's the best? And then I ask myself, I don't think, personally, I'll answer it for myself, I don't think these are the 12 best teams in college football. I think we have some of them, I think, was ever meant to be. And then you have to ask yourself, do we have a stupid playoff? Right? Like every other sport.
Yes.
The playoff is obviously in the NFL and other professional sports, you can end up in a weird scenario where a wild card team is actually pretty good and they don't make it, and that's what happens. But it's few and far between. It's usually one fringe team, anyways. We're at a point now where I think there are 3+ teams in the college football playoff who are not a part of the top 12. That's kind of when you're getting less than 75% of it correct, do we have the right format? That would be like my big question. And unfortunately,
I think
any format that creates objectivity, there's no way in hell Sankey says, yeah, I'm in for that, because it would probably mean the SEC doesn't get this big favoritism that they normally do, even though I question if they deserve it. But that's a whole can of worms that I don't know if we want to open up at the hour mark.
look, that's to be honest, I can't believe we're at an hour. But we're looking at this from a 500% zoom lens. If I zoom it out a little bit to like 100%, anyone at home who might think college football playoff conversations in July are boring, I agree with you. We didn't want to talk about the college football playoff format topics in August and July, but those were important to discuss. And I hope everyone takes today as a frame of reference the next time we're talking about it, because we don't know what next year's format's going to be. We don't know how many teams are in it, and we don't know how it's going to be decided. We know that the Big Ten wants the AQI model, which is the automatic qualifiers, basically setting it up to be like an NFL model, where in the NFL you win your division, you get the automatic bye, or end up taking one of the final 3 wildcard spots based off of record or other criteria, specific criteria, not like eyeball criteria, specific criteria that earns you a playoff spot. So what the Big Ten essentially wants to do is they want their conference champion and I think number 2 to automatically go in for the Big Ten, the SEC, and then 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5 for to play in, and that's their specific criteria for the other 2 spots from the Big Ten. The SEC gets that, and then the Big 12 and the ACC each get 2 spots. Obviously, there's a reason that the other 2 conferences didn't agree to this, is because they wanted the Big 12 and the ACC, by signing that document, would have admitted to the Big Ten, the SEC, that they are inferior. And while they may be inferior, you can't put that in writing. The SEC didn't agree to it because, rightfully so, they're saying you're only going to limit us to 4 playoff teams. Well, they got 5 in this year, so they're basically saying year in year out, as long as the committee's choosing and there's no qualifiers, we're going to have more teams than if we agree to a qualifier system. I don't know what the best solution is, but the fact that we're trusting, here's a analogy. I don't know if it'll land. We're both NFL fans. Those teams have the smartest people in football running. Some of those teams have the smartest people in football running their front office, scouting, choosing players in the draft, choosing players to sign. You can go all the metrics you want, but a lot of their decisions ends up with the eyeball test, and they're wrong about 50% of the time. So now you're telling me you're putting athletic directors whose number one job isn't watch football, who probably aren't watching a lot of the West Coast games, and you're giving them these numbers that they probably don't understand. Strength of schedule for strength. Like, if you really drill down on one of those guys, but like explain all of this to me, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you all of it. And you're still trusting their eyeball test over specific qualifiers. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm sorry this rant's been long. I just think Notre Dame fans, I feel for you, but this is how the playoff was set up. It also begs the question, you brought it up at the beginning before we started recording. Tulane and JMU, I'm happy for their fan bases that they're in. But what's the benefit? Why are we inclusive? Because, look, JMU could go to Watson and beat Oregon, but they're 20 and a half point dogs. I don't think any of us are going to pick that. Tulane could go beat Ole Miss. They lost 45 to 10 against them at the beginning of this season. If you're trying to have the best teams in the country be in your playoff, that's not it. And like you said, and then number 2, Can we please stop pretending that these teams are playing the same sport? Tulane and JMU are a bad example because they are. They're legitimately good group of 5 teams. But why not have a group of 5 playoff? Because right now you're taking away 2 spots that could easily belong to a Notre Dame and a BYU, or maybe throw a Utah in. You know what I mean? And instead of having to keep asking or begging to let's expand the playoff more, like Kirk Herbstreit asked for today. Instead, you could actually put together a playoff of the best teams in the country, and then also give the group of 5 its own shine by having its own playoff and having those programs, those schools, and those conferences make their own money on the group of 5 playoff. The FCS does it. They've done it for years. It's worked. But I just don't understand.
I'm going to add one extra bullet point to your why do we use ADs to make these decisions. These
Thank
people also get financial benefits to certain outcomes happening. Like if there are more teams from that AD's conference that make it, that's more money their conference gets to share, which is more money that in job security that they obtain. So why are we letting people who have ulterior motives other than putting out the best bracket make these decisions? I'm going to add that one in there too. Okay, now to the group of 5. I'm with you. Inclusivity is a lot of fun. It's a great thing in the world. When it comes to the college football playoff, I think we can draw a line there. I also just don't imagine it would be fun, particularly for the group of 5. UNLV and Boise State played a great Mountain West championship this past week, I believe Friday night. That was kind of the end of their season. It's like now, congratulations, you win. Like UNLV, you lose that game. Okay, now you get to go play Minnesota in a bowl game that nobody's going to watch at a location that none of your fans are going to go to. And half of Minnesota is not even going to play anyways. So you're like, all right, like what's the point of this bowl game? Why not have a playoff? Why not give them games to play? It gives these schools meaning to play for and something more than just, okay, my season's over now because I'm not one of one or one of two. And also, like as fans, it's going to be way more fun to watch JMU versus UNLV, Boise State versus Tulane, South Florida versus Memphis. Like those games would be fun and people would watch them if they had implications and meaning in a playoff versus like I can promise you Saturday night how many people on Saturday night are really going to be diehardly tuned in to Oregon James Madison? Oregon fans, James Madison fans, people will probably watch the first quarter or two to see if it's close. If Oregon goes up 21-0, half those viewers are gone. Like it's Saturday night. People have better things to do. Now, I'll tell you this: if you put the JMU versus Tulane conference semifinal for the
I'm
semifinal
watching
playoff
that.
game for the group of 6 on a Thursday night, heck yeah, I'm watching that. So why not? It's going to generate more money for companies and for the schools. It's more entertaining for fans. And if you're a player, it's got to be you're fighting for like it would be fun to not just have your season end on the 12th game or off your conference championship. It would be fun to actually have a playoff that has some meaning to go play in. It also gives them a chance to showcase their talent if they want to make the NFL or they want to enter the transfer portal. Hey, I know my season ended here, but now like if you're Auburn, your season's pretty much over. You can go watch this group of 5 playoff play out and say, wow, these kids are actually really good. I'm going to use this time to scout because it's group of 5 kids playing other top end group of 5 kids. You really get to figure out for portal reasons who's good and who's not. There's a lot of benefits to this. And what's the miss? The miss is maybe once every 30 years, a group of 5 team is actually legitimately enough to go far in a playoff run. That's an if. I don't know if it'll ever happen. There's been maybe 1 or 2 times in the history of college football, a group of 5 team has been good enough to compete at the top level. I don't know if we're really ever going to see that again. And if we do, it's just the same. It's like, I'm not faulting these coaches at all, but Kurt Signetti leaves JMU to take an Indiana job. He left the top level of group of 5 to enter what was like the bottom level of the Power 4. That's how much of an upgrade it was. Obviously, it's worked out really well for them. They're not the bottom level anymore. But that's the difference between an Indiana, not current day, like 3 years ago, Indiana, and James Madison, who was at the top. Like, if coaches can see that big of a discrepancy between these programs, then why do we have to pretend like they deserve this playoff spot over Notre Dame? I promise you, Notre Dame, Oregon wouldn't be 20.5-point spread if Notre Dame went into Autzen Stadium. It would be an awesome electric game that everybody would watch. Instead, we kind of produced a dud.
I mean, if you think about it, James Madison's odds to win the national title game as of 20 minutes ago was like plus 40,000. Tulane's odds to win the national title plus 75,000. And now defer
Both plus
that
80
with
on DraftKings.
yeah.
Farbo, the odds of you becoming
one,
the head coach of Alabama after Kalen DeBoer are plus 60,000. Like that's the
yeah.
realm we're talking about here of these guys winning a championship.
Yeah, I mean, just think about like we'll get into the odds itself, but the odds for Ohio State to win a national title is plus 230. No, I didn't say 2,300. I didn't say 23,000. I said plus 230. And we have teams in the playoff that are plus 40,000 and plus 75,000. A 20 and a half point spread should not exist in our playoff. That is clear as day. That's not the best 12 teams in the country that are in our playoff. I mean, part of that reason is because the ACC is severely screwed up. Are we at ACC doomsday? Or are we? Is it just because Miami lost a game? Like, is it too dramatic to start freaking out about the future of the ACC? Even though you can look ahead and be like, okay, James Franklin's probably going to need a couple years, but he's going to bring Virginia Tech to be competitive. It's probably not going to go 7-5 next year. Miami, they'll probably go 10-2. I think you can always book Cristobal for a couple weird losses, but they're always going to be at the upper end. Florida State, who the hell knows? Other than that, man, and Virginia was good this year. Duke was the champion at 8-5. Is it like panic time for the ACC?
I think it should be. And this goes into, again, we'll save our whole thoughts on a future model maybe for a different show, just given the time we're at.
We have a long off season.
Yeah, any nerves you have as a college football fan about the future of the sport, I would call valid. I think we've been headed down such rampant change without much thought about the actual implications of the things that I say we have any say. The people in charge, the NCAA and the College Football Playoff Committee, those people there, they kind of make these decisions because it sets out one little fire, not realizing they just set themselves up for 50 more. And like the ACC this year is a perfect representative of that. Whatever weird tiebreakers they had going on that allowed for a 7-5 team to make your conference championship game is horrible. And there's going to have to be reform. Doesn't. And like in the SEC and the Big Ten, regardless of if you have weird rules or not, there's enough top end elite teams that's just never going to happen. Like there's just too many good teams where like at the very least you could make an argument and say, oh man, like Oregon's really good. They should have played in that. Like, okay, but Indiana, Ohio State are probably better, right? Like, and I'm just using that as an example. Every year that's going to happen. Like maybe one year you're like, this team maybe should have made it, but they didn't. But hey, like Michigan's still really good. I'm fine that they got the opportunity. The ACC is not deep enough to have that issue. We saw it this year. If it happened this quickly in the college football playoff and this quickly in conference realignment, who's to say it's not going to get worse as these conferences get bigger? Because yes, they're going to get bigger. The opportunities where you're going to have conference champions who played like a single team in their conference that wasn't over 500. And they're just going to get really lucky where they're going to get the bottom 9 teams of their conference and they're just going to kill them all without having to play a
theoretically Texas team.
Yeah, like that. If they didn't choke to Texas, that was almost exactly what they had this year. And you know, this is a whole conversation. I'm trying to say my point without getting into proposals of what I would do. But there's a world where the Big Ten automatic qualifier has some energy to it. I think of like, what if we get the 1 plays the 4 and the 2 plays the 3 or something of that nature, some version of that, talking conferences. That way Duke has to play Miami. And if they played, I would safely bet that Miami would beat the brakes off them, especially in a loser goes home kind of game. And we wouldn't even have to worry about it. But now you have Duke and Virginia playing in your ACC title game that had little to no juice. It was an exciting game in terms of score, but in terms of like watching the Big Ten championship and going back and forth, I was watching 2 entirely different sports.
That goes back to what I was saying is if you thought you were watching 2 different sports, watching the Big Ten championship game versus the ACC, how different of a sport are we watching when we watched Boise State versus UNLV? The tops in that conference, who are one of them made the playoff last year, got beat, versus the SEC title game. We watched the best of that. Give us a group of 5 playoff. Make everybody happy. Jason, at the risk of this taking an hour and 4-hour show, or making Logan happy and going 3 hours, let's speed it up. So we've gone over the Notre Dame stuff. We've gone over inclusivity. We've gone over the ACC champion. I think one thing we have forgotten is that the playoff is fun. This is the best moment of our season theoretically. Obviously, I love the regular season itself, but this is why you play the games. Jace, call your shot. Go game by game. I'll try to advance them in my head for you. Who's gonna win these? 12 versus 5, Oregon at Austin Stadium. Yeah. Who's your winner?
I'm going to go the Ducks, and I don't think too much analysis is needed. I think they're overpowered JMU. They might run for 500 yards in that game. That's a Oregon, let's just dominate on the ground and get healthy kind of game for the Ducks. That'll lead them to go play Texas Tech in the next round. We'll move down. We'll go Alabama at Oklahoma into the 9-8 slot. I'm just looking at the bracket. So if you're listening, picture the bracket in your head. I'm just going down. If you have the ability to pull out your phone or something, you can pull up the bracket and go with me. Alabama at Oklahoma. This is a battle of two teams that I think don't particularly deserve to be here, but they got the patch to do it. I'm going to take Oklahoma in the rematch. I think there's 3 a blueprint on how to beat Alabama. Yeah, and until Alabama, like, who can Alabama figure out their weakness? Oklahoma knows it. They already beat them, and Alabama has shown it against Auburn. They just showed it again against Georgia. Alabama, I don't think, is going to be able to figure out their weakness before this game. I'm going to roll with Oklahoma to get this rematch, especially in Norman. That Oklahoma would then take on Indiana. Tulane, Ole Miss. I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I think this is going to be one of those games where, like, Tulane will be a little frisky for the first quarter and a half or so, but the final score is going to be a 20-point win for Ole Miss. That'll make them go play Georgia in the quarterfinals. And then last first-round game is Miami at Texas A&M. I believe A&M is 3.5-point favorites. I am going to roll with Miami in this game. This will be kind of my big shocker, first-round upset. I think they have something. I think they feel like blessed or maybe like gracious to be in the playoff. And I also think this is a pretty damn good football team. They have 2 tough losses that people are calling Louisville and SMU. But like Cristobal, he's going to lose games like that. But also in big games and big moments, Cristobal, he's been known to win games against teams that people kind of count him out on. I've heard a lot of people talking highly of Texas A&M. I think this Miami team is going to be the most tough physical team that Texas A&M has played. And Miami also arguably has the best defensive line in the country. Texas A&M struggled against Texas, and I think Miami's even a step up in terms of physicality and toughness. So I'm going to take Miami as my big first-round upset. That means they get Ohio State in the second round. I'll start here. I think Ohio State takes care of business. Again, I do think the bye week is a little bit troublesome. I could see this game being tied at halftime, but Ohio State making the play or two in the second half that they need to move on, putting Ohio State in the semifinals. I got Georgia, Ole Miss. I'm going to move back up here. Georgia, Ole Miss. I think this is going to be fireworks. I think this is going to be a great game. But I think Georgia gets it done. I don't trust Ole Miss's defense enough to give them a true playoff run, especially if Georgia's one weakness is not explosive plays, but you play an Ole Miss team that gives up a lot of explosive plays and a lot of yards in general. I like the odds for Georgia. I think they also roll. I see this being very similar to Ohio State, Miami. Around tied at halftime, Georgia comes out, makes the right adjustments, gets it done. Indiana at Oklahoma. I think this is a bloodbath. I think Indiana comes out firing on all cylinders. I don't think Oklahoma is all that. And I don't think you can be a one-dimensional team against Indiana and expect to beat them. And that's kind of what Oklahoma is without much of a run game. Give me Indiana. I could see a world where John Mateer gets sacked 6+ times, especially considering how much they like to run him. That could be troublesome for them. And then at the top, Texas Tech versus Oregon. This is going to be, I think, the best game of the quarterfinals. I think these are 2 very good teams. I think they're probably overall very similar. They beat you in the air. They've got good ground games, very good defenses, especially Texas Tech's. I'm going to give this edge to Oregon. I think they're going to come out on top here. I think that tune-up game against JMU is going to be very beneficial. Like I said, I think these bye teams start off slow. I just think Indiana, Georgia, Ohio State are enough they're better enough than the other teams that they can overcome the shaking off the rust. I think Texas Tech and Oregon are so similar that Texas Tech's going to have to shake off that rust for a couple quarters, and that might set them back on an Oregon team where they might not be able to come back against. All right,
All right,
semifinals. We got the
your
take it away.
final four. Your final four. It's Oregon versus Indiana, I think at the Fiesta Bowl, and then Ohio State versus Georgia at the Peach Bowl. Just a ridiculous Final Four. Let's start with the first one. Indiana, Oregon. Who you got?
We got a rematch. Ducks will have a chance at their revenge. I don't think they take advantage of it. I'm going to go with the Hoosiers to win that one. Tight game. Score-wise, I think this will be tight, and play-wise, I think this will be a very tight game. I'm telling you, Indiana has that magic that all teams that make big runs and win championships have. I think Indiana's got that magic to them this year. I expect them to make the big play or two down the stretch, probably one offensively, one defensively to get that win and move on to the national championship game where they will take on the winner of Georgia, Ohio State, which would be just cinema. I mean, that would be such a phenomenal semifinal game. These are two teams that have played in a few championship and or playoff games in our recent lifetime, and they're always fantastic. This will be nothing short of that. I am going to roll with Ohio State in this one. I think Ohio State, if they can get up on Georgia, they're going to take the cake on it. Ohio State, to me, is just so explosive that it's hard to pick them to lose, because even if they're down in a game, you could just see a world where Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate, or name one 5-star receiver, makes big plays, they come back. I think Georgia's a very good football team, and I think this is going to be a toss-up of a game. Both of the semifinal games would be. But I'm going to go Ohio State, and we're going to get an Indiana-Ohio State rematch in the national championship game.
All right.
Ohio State Buckeyes get the revenge.
I had a feeling you'd go that
Ohio State
route.
Buckeyes
the Big Ten title game, you said at the beginning or in the middle of the show that you said the Big Ten title game might be the national title game. And if that's the case, I can't imagine. I'm going to be shooting myself in the foot again. I can't imagine Ohio State will lose that game again. But, we've seen it happen. We've said it for 4 years before this year about I can't imagine Ohio State's going to lose against Michigan again. But they've done it before, so maybe Indiana is going to become their new thorn in their side. I like your bracket. I was trying to figure out how I would set it up differently. Look, the first one would have been I would have Miami over A&M. I think A&M could come out up 28-0 on Miami, but I think they're just as likely for Miami to just bully them. Questions about Ole Miss and Tulane. I know Pete Golding's the head coach of Ole Miss, permanent head coach. He's had the job for like 4 minutes. He's been with the team. He's been the DC. But he's not running his scheme offensively. He's not running what he wants to do. So how much of a drop-off is it having Charlie Weiss Jr. call plays instead of Lane Kiffin? Tulane, John Summerall, how fast does he want to get to Florida? To be completely honest with you, I'm sure he loves the fact that they're in the playoff. But if they put up an incredible performance, I mean, I guess that's promoting Tulane. But, you're going to go up against Georgia now. Alabama, Oklahoma, you're right. I don't know if that was either team deserved necessarily to be in the playoff. Oklahoma deserved to be in the playoff because they beat Alabama. And they've beaten them twice in a row now. And they make it a third time. If Kalen DeBoer loses to the same team 3 times in a row, dude, heat's going to be on him. And then the Oregon JMU game, I hope it's a good game just for fandom. But I don't know. I'm just excited to see what Autzen Stadium looks like in December with a football game going on. You and I have been there when it's had snow in January, but in December football, I've never seen that. I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, if it gets snow, that would be pretty fun too. That game is, I think, the least. It's the Saturday night game, which is interesting because I think it's probably the least exciting of the 4. And I'm saying that as an Oregon fan, just trying to be objective. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are on that, but yeah, you got Alabama, Oklahoma Friday night at 7 Eastern on ABC, and then kind of staggered throughout the day. You've got noon Eastern, Miami, Texas A&M, 3:30 Eastern, Ole Miss, Tulane, 7:30 Eastern, Oregon, James Madison. I just wanted to give the script for everybody so they had it, can plan the weekend of the 19th and 20th accordingly. We won't be picking those games today, though. We will be doing real picks in the coming shows. We got some time.
I'll say this, that we are 50 episodes in to this podcast, but we're not seasoned clickbaiters because Jace, his national title winner, has the best odds to win the national title. So we are kind of chalk right now, but look, sometimes that's just what it is. Like, we're not going to go out and pick Tulane to win the national title. If you want to write that article, if you want to make that your take on a podcast, feel free. We're going to tell you who's damn good, and Ohio State's damn good. Indiana's damn good. This is going to be a fun playoff in general. I'm excited for it to start. It is, as a fan of one of the teams in the playoff, I'm happy Notre Dame's not in it, which is all you need to know about the state of our playoff. Yeah. But look, I'm so excited. December 19th, December 20th. Hey, I'm going to be going to my dad's office Christmas party on December 20th at around that time. So I might need some text updates if I can't watch the game on my phone.
Can you guys get TNT on your monitor?
Can we, how about ESPN? Oh, I know he's talking, but there's playoffs going on. There's so much else to get into. I mean, Jace, I think for our, I don't even know if it's a preview show. For our Thursday show, we should talk about all these programs opting out of bowl games. Is it the end of bowls? We have to talk about Matt Campbell. Penn State crawled and failed ass backwards into a really good hire. We can talk about that. There's a lot to still talk about. We have college football season may have ended on Saturday. The playoffs might be starting in a couple weeks, but we have to talk Heisman. There's just, the conversation is just starting, man, and a lot of it pertains to the future of the sport, not just this season, but for the betterment and the health of the sport going forward. So make sure you stay with us. Make sure you stay right here for another 50 episodes. Make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion. Spell it out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, at Flag for Discussion spelled out. We are on Twitter at F4Discussion, on TikTok at Flag4Discussion. It's been a great 50 episodes. Somehow we timed it for the 50 episodes to happen on our Selection Sunday Conference Championship Saturday recap show. Kind of beautiful, kind of poetic in that way. That's how I describe Jace, too. But on that note, Jace, I hope I have you for another 50 episodes. I hope everyone listening and watching is here for another 50 episodes and beyond. My name is Farbod Merkazi, here as always with the lovely and poetic Jace Hatfield. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Flagged for Discussion.